So, in 1880, at the Milan Convention, the president of that conference was Abby Giuliani Terra, and she lectured for 2 days talking about how great the oral method was and how awful sign language was for 2 whole days. Part of the speech, he said that the kingdom of speech and the queen accepts no competition. Speech is jealous and wants to be in control. Just like a mom of a child placed the judgment before Solomon. Speech wants her own abilities. She wants her own school, instructions, deaf, mute, without sharing. But she renounces all. That quote, 132 years later, continues to be true. The oralists still want complete control and want to completely eliminate sign language. In comparison, the ASL supporters say that sign language is important. But it's okay if you want to learn speech as well. You can do that. But still, for 132 years, we're still seeing this war, this fight against sign language. AGB and its affiliations constantly attack and go against sign language. They're trying to get rid of schools for the deaf and ASL. Remember the Pepsi letter? Last year, the Indiana School for the Deaf and the Board of Trustees, they and the AGB chapter, called Hearing Indiana, convinced the governor to appoint 2 affiliated Hearing Indiana onto the Indiana School District Board of Trustees. But they didn't send their children to the school for the deaf. They were involved in business or the school for the deaf, bilingual education. They want a plan to force the school to change to the oral method. Now, we're seeing the second section of this plan. Recently, the Indiana legislature has proposed a new bill called the HB 1367. That bill has not been passed yet, but it was a surprise, a last-minute bill. It's also like the AB 2072 here in California. There was no consultation with the deaf community or deaf services or ISD. There was no conversation with the school for the deaf. They just went ahead and put it on us. They sprung it on us. And now, of course, our natural reaction is to act against it. What is a law? It has 3 fundamental parts. First, it sets up a Center for Deaf and Hearing Impaired Education. Well, it will promise that children who are deaf or hard of hearing impaired will acquire the best education and academic abilities. Second, it requires the Indiana School for the Deaf and Blind, and also, well, for the deaf, and also the School for the Blind, to undergo accountability and performance tests to see that the tests have that performance improves. Now, this isn't a way to satisfy the schools. People have to, it's to show that the schools improve or fail. Third, the ISD, School for the Deaf, will have outreach and services for the parents or deaf children that are newly identified as deaf. So the parents can decide and know all their choices. Those services will be moved under the new Center for the Deaf and Hearing Impaired. There'll be no more ISD or services like that. So what's the problem with the law? Well, the Center for the Deaf and Hearing Impaired, it sounds okay. It seems to have a lot of oversight, but center means neutral. We all know what neutral means. It means they'll be more pushed over to the oral method and only a little bit of ASL services. Second, the name deaf and hearing impaired, not deaf and hard of hearing. Okay. Third, it will ensure the best communication. Communication? Not language? Yeah, communication. We know that communication is not equal to language. It's not the same as language. Communication alone does not mean language. About the accountability and choices. Well, it's good for the school to see improvement and want to improve. And I've already explained why schools for the deaf have a hard time raising those test scores. The reason they're constantly getting new people in the oral method is because they were failed at the other school. They would fall behind in language and communication and academics. They'd fall really behind. The school has to work really hard to try and catch them up and teach them at the same time. They end up bringing down the test scores. New people transferring in continue to keep the test scores down. Second, they're blaming the schools for the deaf not improving. So, the oral schools, do they have no accountability? Provisions for accountability? Or does this law not apply to the oral schools? Where's the balance? Also, there are also no punishments against the school now. But will that change later? Maybe, who knows? Third, ISD has been providing outreach services. Of course, ISD has tried to explain about sign language and ASL and all the other choices, and also about oralism. But they make it very clear what the disadvantages and all the negatives about oralism are. I have a good friend who works at ISD, the School for the Deaf, and knows about the school, all the choices. One time, he told me about the outreach services at ISD. He told me about the consultation and how they discuss it, and they try to lean more towards sign language, naturally. And you know what happened was? Most parents, let's say 90%, they go ahead and pick the oral method anyway. The dream that the child will hear and speak and be normal, it's just a dream. The dream's too powerful. The parent's mind overrules the facts and the numbers. Now, people are complaining about ISD's support towards sign language. The parents are still choosing oral method and implants. What are oralists afraid of? Speech? It's the kingdom. And the queen is jealous and wants absolute power, absolute control, and will tolerate no competition.